What's your most unhinged, wrong place, wrong time story? When my wife Abby and I got the call that her mom had collapsed, we booked it to the hospital in complete panic mode. The nurse at the desk was swamped and just waved us toward room 314 without looking up. We burst through the door expecting to find Abby's mom hooked up to machines, but instead discovered a teenage girl in scrubs organizing medical supplies with surgical precision. "Oh, thank God," she said without looking up. "Are you here about my discharge papers? I need an adult signature so I can get back to the ICU." Before we could even explain we were looking for someone else, she turned around and we saw she couldn't be more than 16, with exhausted eyes and a volunteer badge that read, Sophie. She looked exactly like one of my students after pulling an all-nighter for a major project. "Wait, you're not from social services, are you?" Her face went white as she continued talking. "Because technically, I'm not supposed to be working this many hours, but Mrs. Tanaka in 302 needs someone to translate for her grandson's surgery." That's when the whole story came tumbling out in a rush. Sophie had been living alone for 8 months, ever since her grandmother died, and she'd been forging guardianship documents while working 3 jobs and somehow maintaining a 4.0 GPA. She collapsed during her double shift because she hadn't eaten in 2 days, and before that she'd been donating plasma twice a week to help pay for her grandmother's medical bills. "I've got everything under control," she insisted with a kind of stubborn pride I recognize in my most independent students. "I work here weekends, tutor kids after school, and do data entry at night. Rent's only $600, and I got accepted to 3 colleges with full rides." Abby's teacher instincts kicked in immediately as she asked, "Sweetie, when's the last time you had a proper meal?" Sophie just shrugged with practiced nonchalance. "Define proper meal. I've gotten really creative with ramen combinations." A social worker showed up then, looking like she'd been running between crises all day. "Sophie, you missed another appointment and we need to discuss your living situation," she started, then stopped when she noticed us. "Oh, sorry. Are you relatives?" "Not exactly," I said, though something about this kid's fierce determination reminded me of my most dedicated students. The paperwork turned into a complete nightmare once we learned more. Sophie had been passed around to relatives who only wanted her survivor benefits, and her case file was thick with notes about a gifted but defiant teenager who refused traditional foster placement. 3 weeks later, we convinced her to crash in our guest room while she figured things out, and that first night she tried to pay us rent with crumpled bills from her tip jar. The real drama started when her Uncle Ken surfaced after months of silence, having heard about her college acceptances, and suddenly wanting custody to access her trust fund from her grandmother's life insurance. During the custody hearing, Sophie stood up and faced the judge with more composure than most adults. "Your Honor, I've been managing my own life since I was 15, and I know the difference between people who want to help me succeed and people who want to profit from my success." She looked directly at Ken and added, "You didn't even know I was in the hospital. These women found me on the verge of unconsciousness and stayed to make sure I was okay." The judge granted us temporary guardianship, and Ken got supervised visits that lasted exactly 1 meeting when Sophie caught him trying to hack into her college fund. Now our house runs on Sophie's schedule, which means dinner happens whenever she gets home from her latest volunteer project. Every night when she finally stops studying, surrounded by acceptance letters and scholarship forms, she tells us, "Thanks for not leaving when you could have just found the right room." Honestly, we're grateful Abby's mom was in room 316, not 314, though Sophie still gives us grief about not double-checking room numbers. We found Abby's mother 15 minutes later, perfectly fine and embarrassed about calling us over heartburn, but that mix-up gave us Sophie and taught us that sometimes the best families are the ones you never saw coming.